Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today, Resilient Fundraising and Withstanding Fear, Fatigue, and Change, hosted by Kia Kroom and Ariva. We're very excited for our session to get started today. This session will be recorded, and you're going to get a copy of the recording as well as a copy of the PowerPoint slides afterwards. So feel free to take notes, but all this information, you will get it to be able to share with your team and anyone else who might be interested. So I will go ahead and get us started. We have a lot to cover today. Welcome to Resilient Fundraising and Withstanding Fear, Fatigue, and Change. Really quickly, before we get started, I want to highlight a great event that we have coming up. If you've attended Ariva webinars, thank you for being here. But if you're joining us on our first webinar, Ariva is constantly putting out educational content throughout the nonprofit industry, and we have a really huge live in-person event that's happening in Boca Raton, Florida on October 16th and 17th. This is our Ariva Driven by Cause Philanthropic Summit. Here's a few of the speakers that will be there. We have the head of the Giving USA report, the CEO of Philanthropy Together, the founding CEO of the Nonprofit Alliance, the development officer from Charity Navigator, the vice president of AI innovation at Donor Search, the president and CEO of Carter Consulting, the two CEOs of the Community Foundation of Broward County, as well as the Community Foundation for Palm Beach and Martin County. And then we have Susan Packard-Orr, who is not only the co-founder, CTO, and chairman of Ariva, but a prolific philanthropist with years of experience, as well as our own Chris Fink and David Blyer on the Ariva side, and then some other great speakers from Take Stock in Children, Florida Atlantic University, and PNC Bank. I'll put this in the chat if anyone is interested in registering. That's where you can get your tickets and learn more, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. But wanted to share this all with you as it's going to be a great event. All right, so getting into it, we're going to go through our welcome and introductions of our fantastic panel today. We're going to ask some poll questions of the audience. We're going to talk about personal resilience through radical self-care, organizational resilience for long-term sustainability, strategies for what you could do right now, and then give a recap and also Q&A. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or the chat box. We'll be monitoring that, and then at the end of the session, we will go through all questions and answer any and all that you might have. All right, so on our panel today, we have Kia Kroom, who is the owner and CEO of Kia Kroom Fundraising and Philanthropy. How are you today, Kia?
I am terrific. I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks.
So excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited as well. And then we have Chris Fink, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Ariva. How are you today, Chris?
I'm great. Thanks for asking, and thanks for putting this together for us, Gabby. And Kia, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thank you both.
So let's go ahead and get started. You're going to see a poll question pop up on your screen, and we would like to know, do the cuts to grants and federal dollars impact your organization? So these questions help us kind of cater our presentation to the majority of the folks we have on today. So we just want to ask these to get your feedback, see who we have on, and make sure we're tailoring our information to you guys. All right, so looking at those results, so yes, 61% of you say that you are impacted by those cuts, 29% say no, and 10% are not sure yet, which is also fair. Next question we'd like to ask, does your organization have a plan in place to deal with this funding crisis? Give a few more seconds. We have a lot of answers pouring in. All right, so it seems to be split. 51% of you say no, you do not have a plan in place. 49% of you say yes, you do have a plan in place. And then last question we're going to ask this, you can choose multiple answers here. So if you scroll down in your poll window, you'll be able to click which ones apply to you, we would like to know, how would your organization be impacted if grants and federal funding disappeared? Would it be loss of critical funding streams, reduced program capacity and service disruptions, increased competition for alternative funding, staff layoffs and burnout, which we're going to talk a lot about today, donor and stakeholder confidence concerns, increased dependence on unstable revenue sources, delayed or halted innovation and growth, increased reliance on donors and volunteers, or not sure? All right, give it a few more seconds. Okay, so looking at the results from the poll, 58% of you, so this was our largest one, said increased reliance on donor and volunteers, with program capacity, competition for funding, staff layoffs and burnout, loss of critical funding streams. So those are our top ones, halted innovation and growth. So that's interesting to see. It seems like you all are facing those issues across the board, all of them.
Yeah.
All right, and then I'll pass it over to you, Pia.
All right.
So you passed it over to me, correct? I just want to make sure I'm
Yes.
hard of hearing. Okay, in one ear. Thank you for that. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I want to offer this. I'm going to talk about some things that everyone's seeing. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud, and just acknowledging the moment that we're in, but I promise to bring us back up, because if you know anything about me, I'm a pretty positive and optimistic person. So touch on some stuff that might be a little, but I promise to bring us right back up. I just want to acknowledge the moment that we are in. If you're like me, and you're deeply passionate about the work that you're doing for your respective organizations, if you care, and I mean so many caring people in this space, this is a difficult moment for you, especially. You're a decent person. You do your best to do right by folks. This is a difficult moment for you, right? The moment we're in, and I want to be clear what that moment is, where we're seeing what I believe to be an attack as far as philanthropy is concerned, right? And a host of other things when you look at it through an intersectional lens. But one thing that I'm very, very clear about is that this moment that we're in, our ability to navigate it and respond, rests on our commitment to amplifying the voices of historically marginalized people and communities. Those voices have to be in the center of that, right? Acknowledging the frontline communities, right? Folks that are on those front lines, whether we're talking environmental justice, criminal justice, right? Organizations representing the interest of historically, socially minoritized people, whether you're advocating for disability justice or LGBTQIA2S plus justice and freedom, right? These communities have to be in the center of any strategy. And I just want to acknowledge that as well in this moment. Next slide, please. So I want to get into what this in the slide in here, I wanted to explain, what we have in store. And I want to take a moment to do that here. I'm going to talk to you about resilience, but there's a couple of levels to this, right? Resilience and fundraising on a personal level where we look at the person, right? Because we are not machines. Right? And very seldom do I hear us talk about work in this space that really looks at the person, right? The folks that are powering that aspect of the work when I speak to fundraising, right? But this across the board, but for intensive purposes, we're talking about in a fundraising capacity, right? I'm going to talk about that personal resilience, looking at the fundraiser. I'm also going to talk about organizational resilience, right, as a means to ensure that organizations are sustainable over time. I've fielded phone calls and emails in recent weeks from organizations that are having to close their doors or have already closed their doors, right? So this is real stuff when we talk about organizational, excuse me, my country grammar sometimes, organizational fundraising resilience, right? I'm going to talk about that and what that looks like, right? In both cases, on a personal level with the person, organizational wise, right? And I'll share with you what I'm doing right now and what I'm telling my co-conspirators to do right now and supporting them in crafting strategies and tactics in this moment. Is that okay with everybody? Y'all know I like for the chat to talk to me and I talk back, right? So that's what we have in store. And I want to dive right into personal resilience. And I'm going to get a little personal, right? Go back for me. Go back. I'm going to get a little personal. I've been fundraising for 25 years. My claim to fame is having raised $1 billion for organizations across the globe, right? And it wasn't until a few years ago when I had a pivotal moment where my son left the nest. I'm a proud mother. He left the nest and went to college. And what I acknowledged was, I've had this great career, right? Have done incredible things that I've been so fortunate to be a part of. And yet I found myself looking back as I go into the empty nester phase of my life. And I know it's somewhere my empty nesters at. If you just put a thumbs up or something in the chat, you want to interact with me. But it was when I had that time to reflect that I realized that I had not been honoring myself. Right? Done all this fabulous work, but I've really not been the best friend I should be to myself, right? And as a fundraiser, when you've got so many different stakeholders that you're trying to, stay in good graces with and appease and get along with and do impactful work together, the blurring of the boundaries, right? And agreeing to things when you really don't have the mental real estate or the time, right? And teetering going to my son's baseball games with fundraising engagements. What I found was that, yeah, I'd done this and I'd done it for a long time, but what would have happened if I had honored a little bit more of myself, right? And set boundaries, right? Because I felt like a whole mess as I was transitioning into the nest. So I'm having this reflective moment and looking at maybe I didn't do the best job of that to this end, but here's where it changes for me, right? And learning as a fundraiser how to better honor myself and set myself up for success, right? Because as a fundraiser, when you're doing this work, it's critical that you show up at your best. And I want to call out that this is especially true for folks like me who are empaths and fixers and pourers. If that anywhere resembles your personality, then you want to look at how you're honoring yourself and setting boundaries and allowing room for your mental bandwidth, and not just in work, outside of work too, because we want to have boundaries with our loved ones too, right? But ultimately, what I'm saying is this personal resilience, this journey is about learning to do that, right? So that you're showing up in your best light. Next slide, please. Personal resilience in this space, in order to be sustainable at it, right? In order to really honor self, we've got to be heavy on the self-care, as the young people say, heavy on this, heavy on the self-care. I learned that the hard way, right? I learned that at the what some might consider the height of my career, working with an organization that had a $25 million budget. I'm their top performing fundraiser. You know, I have people in my donor profile that people would give gold to just have a conversation with, right? And navigating that and coming to having a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder, right, as a result of, again, remember, I'm walking that line as a parent, as a single parent, and trying to balance my career, right, and not honoring myself and really coming to terms with, you know, yeah, I've got to get a grip on my anxiety, right, to be managed and to better manage that, to minister to that, and to ensure that I can attend to that, because I always want to show up as my best, right? So what have I done about it? Prioritizing self-care. I'm a proponent, a staunch proponent of rest, the nap ministry, all of that, right? Because it's critically important. And I'm committed to maintaining a routine that will afford me the ability to rest and replenish. Because let's be honest, in this space and time, but just in your role as a nonprofit worker, period, there's a lot of pouring that we do into these organizations, right? There's a lot of pouring that we put into these initiatives. So we've got to replenish ourselves, folks, in the interest of personal resilience. And I wanted to quote the great Angela Davis, who, you know, by far, when I heard her say this, it resonated with me in such a strong way. And I'm going to honor her and you all too in reading this quote, even though it's on the screen for you. Anyone who's interested in making change in the world has to learn how to take care of herself, himself, or themselves. And I'm just going to put a period on the end of that. Next slide, please. Heavy on the self-care. Personal resilience. Yeah, it's a iterative journey, right? But it's a radical act when we operationalize self-care, when we really commit to that. It's a radical act. And not only is it a radical act, right? It's essential to our ability to continue doing what we're doing over time, right? Looking at that seventh generation rule, right? In the native, indigenous, and Native American community, that 7 generations rule, where we're looking out 7 generations from now, what the impact of the decisions and choices we're making right now. You know, so in order for us to be together and one on accord in doing that, this has to be at the center of it, core to our survival. I want to quickly quote the late Audre Lorde, one of my favorite quotes. I have so many, right, and some African proverbs and some other things. But I love that she said this. She says, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. What do you say after that? I'm just going to say next slide, because that's a whole mic drop. Now, let's talk about organizational resilience, right? What does that require of us, the stewards of these great causes and organizations that we lead, that we work in, that we pour into and give birth to things into every day, right? Here's my philosophy on, resilient fundraising, how I define it. An approach to fundraising that equips organizations to adapt, sustain, and thrive through challenges, leveraging strategy, innovation, and community-centered practices to achieve a long-term impact. Yes. My belief is that that's what it takes to power the work forward and withstand the fear, fatigue, this moment that we're in, right? And I'm going to get into that. Next slide. What does it require, organizational resilience? It requires a culture of care and empathy, right? I've been in organizations, you've been in organizations and companies where that was not the culture. You might be in one right now. But you can blink. I can't really see you, but wink if you're in danger, right? um, Honesty and transparency within this culture of care are very important. What do I mean right now? I learned just a couple of days ago that a school closed in the DMV area where I live, that employees didn't know that this was coming down the pipe. It just suddenly was such that folks couldn't walk in the doors of their offices of the building on a particular day last week, right? Or it might have been Monday. When we talk about honesty and transparency with both internal and external stakeholders, it's making sure that people who need to be in the know are in the know, right? When concerning things, all the things at this point in time, there has to be a high level of honesty and transparency to give people room to process all that they're processing right now on top of doing their job, right? That's very, very vital to organizational resilience, because it is not lost on me that there are so many remarkable people working in organizations where they're giving their all, right? And to lose employees like that, it's just not something that you don't want to lose an employee like that. Like, folks that have the mission, that embody what your organization is doing, right? Those are individuals that help ensure that an organization is resilient, right? And in this organization, fostering psychological safety is very, very important, right? Creating space for people to share, right? If they're having a rough time, this week, rather than maybe you might be talking to somebody who just wiped tears off of their face going into a Zoom, and you don't necessarily know that. I'm having more conversations with people, donors, partners alike, about how they're feeling. I want to know how you're doing, and I want you to know that I'm holding space. I like to afford that psychological safety to people that I'm working with and connected with me, and I appreciate it when I receive it, right? And I think that is vital, along with just being a human being right now and having, demonstrating some degree of empathy. Is really, really important. And these are very vital for that organization that wants to be more resilient. And I'd be remiss not to also add here that this is not normal business. It can't be business as usual. It's not. And we want to acknowledge that, right? In our comings and goings and interactions with our stakeholders. Next slide, please. Organizational resilience centers sustainability, right? Because how many know that right now it may not be about scalability, and it's likely not. It's not about scaling and achieving, a larger harbinger or group of folks, right? When funding resources are falling away, maybe it's just about sustainability in this moment, right? And having conversations with your funders about sustainability and keeping vital things in place over scalability right now, right? That helps ensure that we're resilient as an organization. It really, truly does also necessitate us having honest conversations internally, right? Internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, about what we're seeing, but about our capacity to deliver, right? I'm talking to folks all the time that are in situations where, due to funding losses, they may not achieve the outcomes that they touted when they were fundraising, right? And having those conversations about scalability and the impact of the times, if there were ever a moment, it's right now, right? And these are things that we can do to be more resilient, right? And in doing that, we foster deeper relationships with donors, believe it or not, right? Because you have the ability to not just be the worker for nonprofit A, B, or C across the Zoom or across the table. You are showing the degree to which, like, I'm a human just like you're a human. I'm a real person, right? And I'm doing the best with what I got right now. And here's the result. And I want to let you know where we are, right? And let's discuss what we can do about it, right? To keep things intact and sustained in this moment. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through these next couple very quickly, because I want to get to the cardinal question of how I'm navigating right now, right? Organizational resilience, systematizing stewardship is really, really key. And one thing that I really enjoy about Ariva is the fact that the product allows one to do that, right? To systematize things and automate things so that I'm not teetering, whether or not somebody was properly and promptly acknowledged, right? Really systematizing stewardship and those meaningful touches to donors, those impact check-ins and things like that, right? That is very, very important. And prioritizing that right now is really, really vital. And being able to consistently steward that will definitely make the difference between whether you are receiving more of a transformative gift from a donor versus one that's very transactional. Okay. Very important component of our resilience is our stewardship in this space. Next slide, please. Right now, especially in this climate, how many know? You can tell I'm a church girl. And when the pastor asks you, how many people in the audience know? Look, how many know in the Zoom room that right now prioritizing retention, retaining your folks is the name of the game right now. Acquisitions is great, but who really has the budget for that? Y'all might not work for some of the organizations that I work for that don't work with, that don't have a donor acquisitions budget or pocket of money. You follow what I'm saying? So you better be holding on to the donors you got, right? Again, I touch a little bit on the need to automate things. We don't want Sister Beth not getting the acknowledgement about her tribute gift. She might say it's okay and smile, but she's really annoyed. And she's going to tell somebody in her T circle about it. And, then you got folks gossiping. You want to make sure you're locked and loaded, automated. And lastly, we want to make sure that when we're heralding our great work and our stories of impact, we want to do that as much as possible right now, because impact is going to be a key, determinant of who gets what. And if you don't believe me, like Bruno Mars says, don't believe me, just watch. Okay? Don't believe me, just watch. It's going to be very important to amplify those stories of impact. And we want to make sure that there are assets framed, right? And that we're presenting our constituents in the best possible light and rooted in stories of hope. That is very important. How many people can use a little more hope in your life these days, right? I'm out of hands, okay? But I'm hopeful nonetheless, right? I'm hopeful nonetheless. Don't get it twisted. Next slide, please. This is a biggie. Get your pen ready or just watch the playback. Organizational resilience I'm gonna lean in, requires that we have a shared understanding in context. What do I mean by that? That things get level set. I wanted to find a politically correct way to say part of this requires that some folks get level set. I'm just going to say the quiet part out loud. This is a moment where everyone has to be on one accord, or at least agree that we all have the same information, right? We might disagree on this, that, but we working with the same information, and looking at what we can do in this context, what we can accomplish together. That might mean that certain board members have to be a part of that meeting where it's expressly stated that no, we're not going to double revenue this year, and we won't likely double revenue next year, right, in this context. But here's what we can do, right? Unless you know about some money coming in or some grants, or you have a billionaire friend that, a windfall gift is coming in that I don't, unless you know that, I'm just going to tell you, we're not likely to double revenue. Now, what we can do is incrementally accomplish this over time, over the next couple of years, right? And here's a strategy to help us get there, but we don't want to overstate and underdeliver. Everyone has to be kind of effectively level set, right? From the board chair to the CEO office, from the bottom up, that's however you want to look at it. And I want to point something out here. We're just over a month in, the big, beautiful bill being ratified, right? And I don't know that we're really having conversations about it and just really unpacking what the implications of that mean for one's donor portfolio, right? If you're a major gifts fundraiser like myself, and the threshold for charitable gift deductions the threshold is higher now, meaning organizations, companies, corporations are going to have to give more, right? And they are giving less across the board to their grantees, and some of those grantees are in our portfolios. There's implications and ripples that we may see resulting from that. And we want to acknowledge that, and manage expectations. Next slide, please. Organizational resilience requires that we be real. Simply put, I don't want to spend a lot of time here, that we be real. It's going to require us in this moment. This is a time when we're adjusting our metrics, our expectations, whether we're talking program delivery to on the revenue side pertaining to fundraising, right? We've got to look at that and make sure that there is alignment, and we have to consider our staffing capacity in the process, right? This isn't a time where you can just expect more out of a little, right? As my grandmother would say, trying to get blood out of a turnip. We got to be real in this moment. Next slide, please. Yes, there we go. One thing, and I think this is the last, that I want to point out right now in this moment, in order to be resilient as organizations, we're going to have to do some things that we may not have done before, or at least explore the possibility, right? We want to demonstrate that ingenuity. This is where, if you have creatives on your team, people like me, I'm an avowed creative. My mind is always going, right? That's a true asset right now. If you have entrepreneurial minded people on your team, that can be an asset right now as we reimagine our work, right? And before we do that, the one thing we want to do is look at what are we doing that we're killing, right? That we're doing well. The communities that we set out to impact are being positively impacted. What are we doing the best? Where are we the strongest? And is it a point in time where we want to align more resources there, right? And perhaps the things that we're not showing up as strong, right? and services where we're not necessarily showing up as strong or having the strongest impact. If there are other organizations in your region or your community, what have you, that are, might it be time to see what kind of alliance you can forge to offload or to I don't want to suggest offload, but to engage them in that work and just veg out on what you do best, where you're having the strongest impact, right? As a survival, not even as a survival, in an effort to be more resilient, right? Because how many know that this moment requires us to really right size our goals, and that should be part of the strategy, right? A big part of the strategy. You know, you want to look at that. Where are you having the most impact? I want to share with you that resilience in this time, you're willing to explore new angles and approaches to doing the work that you're doing. I'll give you a super quick example. Working with a reentry organization in Los Angeles through the historic election, they were discovering that a large proportion of their constituents were not aware that they could essentially vote in the election, right, under California law, right? So a part of the work that they were doing was voter engagement, right? Civic education, civic engagement of the justice involved community, right? And justice impacted community, because how many people know that the justice involved and impacted, you know, sometimes it's a lot to keep up with and need that support, right? So in having one conversation with them, the wheels are turning, and I'm wanting to know, okay, so this voter engagement work, because that's what you're doing, right? I understand that you're doing mutual aid and feeding and helping people get live screened, but you're also doing some critical voter engagement work on the heels of a historic election. Let's get that funded. Right. So why did I share that with you? Because I think that it requires us to have that level of, you know, the power to look at the pivots or angles, right? And how those align or are expressed as funding priorities, right? But we only want to do that where it makes sense, right? In this case, the organization was already working with this community, and they were naturally doing something that perfectly made sense, you know, to explore that angle. This is core to our survival and our resilience, our ability to do that, right? And look and reimagine how we're doing what we're doing. Next slide, please. What can we do right now? What can we do right now? I'm going to tell you what I'm doing really quickly, and I'm going to hand it over to Chris. What I'm doing is having conversations with donors, particularly stalwart donors, about what I'm seeing, what the implications of it are, and I'm enlisting them as a partner in what can we accomplish together, right? What I want to say to you is schedule the email, right? Send the email, the meeting request, right? You don't have to have everything written to a T. You know, I mean, I'm not saying don't send something, you know, that's not correct or grammatically correct. I'm saying craft a message like, listen, you know, would love to have a conversation with you, brief you on, you know, however you want to style it, right? And get the meeting on the books and get your spiel together, your data together about what you're seeing and how that donor can support you in continuing and sustaining the work, right? That is what I'm doing, right? And the last thing I want to say here is perfect can wait, right? Progress can't. So have those key conversations, and I want to pass it over to Chris. And I just thank you all for being here and hearing what I had to say. I hope it resonated with you.
No, that's great, Kia. I love it. That's such an interesting perspective you're bringing in, and we don't hear, I haven't heard before. Gabby and I do a lot of webinars, and I love your insights into, that more human-centered, and organizational approach that you have. It's just, I love it. And I, by the way, I just dropped my daughter off in San Diego College, our youngest, last week. So
Congratulations.
I do feel the empty nester vibe that you were throwing out there. I get it. It feels like I have to refigure out my life a little bit right now, and so a lot of what you said resonated. I'm not sure if I'm an empath or a pourer or a fixer. Maybe I'm all three. I don't know, but I that setting boundaries hit home with me, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you for that.
I don't what is the difference between an empath, fixer, and a pourer, Kia? I don't know the difference.
Woo, we don't have enough time for that, Ken.
Okay.
We don't have enough time.
All right. Um, but I do think, what you're saying about the really being human-centered in everything you do, and really developing deeper relationships with your constituents, with your staff, with everyone else around you, really, to me, is a great segue into, how do you make your organization more resilient on the fundraising side? Because really, the healthiest organizations out there are the ones that have a high level of individual giving, right? Not from corporations or foundations. And I think there's a lot of organizations that we've talked to that are coming to us looking for help are in those situations where they're dependent too much on revenue coming from a single place, the government or
Sure.
foundation, and they are now in trouble, and really looking for ways to diversify those revenue streams and especially increase their individual giving. So,
Absolutely.
and we do have, and I'm coming obviously from a more of a technology and fundraising angle, but I do think everything you're saying, it can be applied to fundraising as well on the individual donor side. And really, we like I say, we have a lot. I talk to organizations every single week coming to us struggling with, it's hard to understand who my constituents are. And how they're affiliated with us, because I've got my donors in one place, I've got my volunteers in another, I'm managing my events over here, I've got my grants and some spreadsheets over here, and to be able to really see a holistic view of my organization and the revenue streams and how people are affiliated with the organization, and how I can connect with them and how they want to be connected with, is a struggle. So, we do uh, we do offer solutions that can help people do that. Really bring all that information into one place, and it doesn't have to be our solution, but having all that information in one place is really important in terms of, you know, building building relationships with your donors, and keeping them engaged and showing appreciation, like you were mentioning earlier, Kia, for them, and strengthening those relationships you have through that appreciation and through understanding how they are affiliated with the organization, and what they're truly passionate about, is important. So we typically have people on average having data in 4 different siloed solutions that we combine into one. And it really helps them kind of, I think, get a handle on how they're doing in terms of where their money's coming from, and how they can increase, especially build up that individual donor base. And if you go to the next slide, Gabby, on diversifying revenue, I mean, that's what I'm talking about, right? You should really, ideally, organizations should have about 60% of their revenue coming from individuals. I know most of them, and maybe some of you don't hear, but that is the goal, because it's really going to help you weather the storm when those other revenue streams don't come through. Building up an individual donor base is hard. It's like it comes through, and Kia, you talked about it earlier too. Donor retention. Every organization I've talked to has struggled with it. It's hard. It's expensive to acquire a new donor, and they will leave quickly, depending on how you interact with them and how much you make them feel appreciated and connect with them at their level. And strengthening that individual donor base is part retention and part acquisition, and you really have to be intentional and work on that piece of it, It doesn't matter what sector you're in, doesn't matter how large you are. You know, everyone struggles with it, but it's about, and going back to Kia, what you're talking about, building, authentic long-term relationships, right, with your constituents. But that also means having the data to be able to do that. You know, being able to segment your donors by different how they're affiliated with you, and generationally, and engaging them with content based on that, right? And thanking them in a meaningful way, right? The person that gives you that memorial gift should be thanked differently than the one giving you, a gift online from Giving Tuesday, or from, the person giving you $10 should be thanked differently than the person giving you 10,000, right? I mean, they sound basic, but you'd be surprised how people aren't doing that, or not even there's some shocking statistics about how donors don't even get thanked at all, which is unforgivable. So when donors feel like they're partners in your mission, and they're not just, writing a check for you, that's where the retention and that lifetime value grows, right, significantly. But also, you can, even though there are funding issues right now, especially from the government, the foundation side, you can expand. There's a few bright lights in there's a giving report um, from an organization that we've done a webinar with before, that has statistics on giving, and there are a few bright lights in there. One of them is that corporate giving is up, and we have some organizations that use our software that have done really good jobs at forging relationships with some local corporations, and really helping them, and forming those mission aligned partnerships with those organizations, and whether it's volunteer opportunities, or social impact opportunities, or maybe investments and donations, they really have helped them in terms of actual measurable outcomes, and making more money. And so I think there are abilities on the corporate and the foundation side too. Foundations are shifting toward more data-driven funding decisions. So your proposals have to be a lot more, I'd say, targeted, and you have to be really more thoughtful about which foundations you're actually approaching for money, and specifically how you're asking, and why, and making sure that your mission and what you're asking for is aligned with them. And I can talk about that a little more offline if you want to. And then, events and strengthening digital fundraising is important too, right? If you're I know that some people are not super excited about doing events, but it is a great way to acquire new donors and bring awareness to your organization. There are ways of pulling off events that don't create too much of an opportunity cost for your organization. There's hybrid and virtual events that you can do. But if you have the right tools, you can be able to pull it off, and still be ROI positive. And then exploring, exploring, earned income and revenue opportunities. Relying solely on donations and grants can be also a little risky, right? Many nonprofits they're starting to diversify, looking into program services. Some sell merch. We have someone that's selling a ton of merchandise, offering training for a fee, membership-based things, recurring giving. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Um, and Kia mentioned this a little bit earlier too, engaging with policymakers, depending on your organization and what your mission is, that could make sense, being that trusted voice in your community. Don't underestimate your influence, right? Educate your supporters and decision makers alike, right? Build those relationships with local and state and federal officials, et cetera. Sometimes you need to lobby. Of course, that does depend a little bit on your mission. Um, and if we go to the next slide, Gabby, tips to diversifying, building engaging online, offline presence. Even uh, there's the online giving is still not a huge piece of the overall pie of individual giving. It's increasing though. It used to be have around 8%, then it was 10, now it's hovering more towards about 15%. So it's growing, and generationally, the younger generations are giving it a much higher percentage than that. So you do, if you want to engage in the younger audiences and have longer term donors, you have to think about what your online presence is. Think about your website, making sure that you're giving those alternative ways to give, both offline and online, right? That's super important. And there's lots of ways to do that. You can, there's an example, if you can see on this slide itself, that we have an organization that doesn't just put a, hey, a standard donate now page. What they've done is they've created images. They've tied to each one of those images a giving level, and within each one of those giving levels, they're tying the benefit of that amount you're giving to what their organization can do with it. So really tying the benefit of your donation to the amount that you're giving visually as well really helps. So there's ways that you can create donation pages that are compelling and really tie the effect of those donations to and the benefit to your organization, so people feel like when they're giving, they really understand what they're supporting. And that, especially for the younger generations, is very important. The older generations tend to give and aren't as concerned about what's happening with that money, whereas younger generations are very, very, very that's very important to them. So there are ways that you can engage people online that are more compelling, and also being mobile friendly. About 50% of online donations are coming from their phones. So, is your website viewable on a phone? Are your donation forms mobile friendly? They should, if not, they should be, right? And have clear call to actions, right? When on your website, sometimes our clients, we have clients coming to us, and it's hard for me to find their donate page on their website. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't. You have to be careful and be user centric in designing your website and your donation pages, etc. So I know we're getting low on time, Gabby. I'm going to keep going to the next slide. I mentioned that USA Giving report earlier and the statistics around 2024 giving. Another bright spot in that report was recurring giving has gone up year to year, which is good to see. And also recurring giving is, I think, now increased to about 30% of overall individual giving, which is huge. So if you don't have a recurring giving program or an option to have recurring giving on your website, you really, really should. And when I say that, I don't mean to just slap a recurring giving page up on your website and just kind of hope everyone's going to come and start becoming recurring donors. You really have to put some thought into it. You have to think about the marketing of it. And, there's a lot of people who will brand the recurring giving programs, call it the monthly giving club, something else like that. They will provide perks, a welcome kit when they become a recurring member. Sometimes they get early access to events and prior to registration. They'll give video messages and behind the scenes stories to people through email marketing. So making them feel a little more special, because those people are giving you $10 a month, and it's about 90% of them are coming from credit cards. But you should have ACH options on there too, and other things, digital wallets, etc. But it's built-in donor retention, right? Those people are giving, but the churn rate is high, meaning the people that drop off once they start their giving you through recurring giving can be high. So you have to keep them engaged. You can't just forget about them once they're signed up. You have to uh, you have to keep constantly engaged with them to make sure they understand that if I keep giving you 10, 20, $30 a month, it's actually it's doing good, and you have to keep reminding them that. And about the average amount people give through recurring giving is about $30, which it adds up quickly. But you do have to leverage your website, leverage social media, email marketing, bring awareness to the program itself, or else you're going to throw that page to give recurring giving on your website, and you're not going to get the results you want in terms of people signing up, right? All right, Gabby, if we go to the next page real quick, we got 5 minutes. All right. Peer-to-peer giving is another great way to acquire new donors. It allows other people to create fundraising pages and raise money on behalf of your organization. If you've never heard of peer-to-peer, you can go to our website and check it out. We have a lot of organizations that are bringing in crazy amounts of money through peer-to-peer giving. It's really something that if you have the right technology in place, it's not hard to get set up and get going. Again, it is though like recurring giving, and that you do need to bring awareness to it. Sometimes people use it for specific campaigns like capital campaigns, because it does allow let's say, typically you want your board engaged and staff engaged in helping you raise money, especially for like a capital campaign. And that could be a struggle. Sometimes the peer-to-peer option is great because it allows maybe a less intimidating way to get those people to help start raising money for your organization, but they're not going to having to shake hands. They can create a donation page. They can send that out through Facebook, through Instagram, through whatever, LinkedIn, and bring their people they're connected to into your orbit and start giving money to your organization. That's tremendously helpful to create that spider network of other people raising money on your behalf of your organization and all of their connected networks, and it can spread out and create a lot of great results for you on terms of the donor acquisition side. So if you don't have a peer-to-peer giving campaign, you might want to think about it. And the last slide really is just about team fundraising, which is another great way to acquire new donors. There's going to be a certain amount of effort to pull off an event on team fundraising side, but if you have the technology, it's doable, and you can the reward in terms of, again, sort of similar to peer-to-peer, it allows you to have that network effect of having a lot of people that you would normally not be able to reach, giving and supporting people that in these events that you now become donors for you, and you have their information. If you want to learn more about peer-to-peer and team fundraising, please just let us know. We can give you more information on that. Kia, I'm going to give it back to you. Finish this off.
Yeah, I said I was going to bring us back up, and I hope I did that. Just know, out there, I hate that we have to do it and we always got to be resilient. But it's something that we've done consistently. And I know that we're in this moment, yet we persist. And just join me in sustaining hope and seeing better days. Thank you. Yeah, we're about at time, right?
We are.
Yeah. You get the playback.
All right.
Yeah, before we go to Q&A, Chris, do you want to go through a few of these slides and then
Yeah, real super quick in a few seconds. If you don't know who
Yeah.
Riva is, please check us out. We are aligned with many different organizations out there. As you can see, we've been in the nonprofit industry for over 35 years. We have over 6,000 clients from all over the world, where our software was built for the nonprofit industry. And if you haven't heard of us, you should check us out. And keep going, Gabby. Yeah, there you go. We can do everything. So there you go. We will manage your donors, your volunteers, your members, your events, your grants, client tracking, etc. We handle auctions. If you want to learn more, please check us out. Keep going, Gabby. This is just a visual representation of what I just said there. Keep going.
And then there's a
Gabby.
poll up on the screen now. If you'd like to learn more about Ariva, go ahead and hit yes, and someone from our team will be in touch with you. And then I'll pass it back to you, Kia, really quickly.
No, I just wanted to thank everybody, and you've got how to get at me. Hey, I respond to emails, DMs. Let's talk.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And then
we're all set.
Yeah, and then I'll put up a poll on the screen if you'd like a consultation with Kia, or for her to get in touch with you to learn more information about her services and what she does. Please go ahead and hit yes, and we'll pass those names along to her. All right, and then I know we're at time. We do have one question in the Q&A box that I will turn over to our panel here. This question is, how can I get connected to donors with impact? So maybe major donors, things like that. Do you guys have any tips for how to reach out to those types of donors?
Donors for impact?
Yes.
I'm not sure I understand exactly what they mean by that. And I don't want to assume. But if I'm a strong advocate of conveying impact for donor retention and acquisitions, right? I wish there was a particular type of donor, you know, to go after, but you want to align with donors that are invested in seeing you be impactful within that affinity or priority, right? And if you're impactful, convey that to them. You know, that would, I hope that helps because I'm not exactly sure I understood.
Yeah, it's a little broad question, right? Yeah, I do think it's having impact in general, though, right? Yeah, it's a very broad question, but you do have to understand who your donors are, I think, to have that impact, right? If you don't, there's connecting with them at their level and understanding how important they are to you is crucial, right? Like I don't think you should be sending a generic email to them asking to give money with a link to a donation form if they've given you, $10,000 last year, right? You should be calling them and having a conversation with them and taking them to lunch and understanding who they are and creating a relationship with them, right? As opposed to someone who might be giving you $10 a year, right? So having
Right.
impact is, I think, meeting them at their level, understanding why they are affiliated with the organization and how much they're giving you and why they're giving. And to understand that, you can do that in many. I've seen people do donor surveys before big campaigns to understand why they give and how they're why they support the organization, to better understand that, to then so they can know how much and then also using other tools like prospect research to figure out how much do we think this person really what is their actual capacity to give and inclination to give to an organization like ours. Sometimes you have prior giving to know that, sometimes you don't, but there are companies out there that we're integrated with that can help you with that too. So but targeted communication's key, and understanding who they are before that communication is important, right? But anyway.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Well, those were all the questions that we had in the Q&A and chat box. Like I mentioned before, you're going to be getting a recorded copy of the webinar and the PowerPoint presentation to take back, review, go through with your teams. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Kia, for your fabulous insight. Thank you, Chris, for the great information. Anything else to add before we finish up here?
I just want to thank Kia for being here, and you too, Gabby, for putting together
Yeah,
this
for
webinar. And thank
having
you
me.
very much for your time. It was great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, well, we hope we will see all of you on our next Ariva webinar, and make it a great day. Thank you.